Rupert Bell is the TalkTV royal correspondent, joins us this morning here on TalkTV. Morning, Rupert. No, the crux of this, did this or didn't this happen, do you think?
Definitely something happened over the 2 hours. There's no disputing that. It is the recollections may vary element of this that I think we all have to take into account. Clearly, there was a great deal of paparazzi interest in Meghan's appearance as she collected this award. In her bright gold shimmering dress, plenty of attention on her. And as she left, then they were going off then to stay in a friend's house in another part of New York. And it's during that 2 hours that clearly events unfolded. Now, as we know, traveling around New York at 80 miles an hour is so impossible. But clearly something went on. There were paparazzi following. No one's disputing that fact. But they say they were kept a respectful distance. And actually the problems were caused by Harry's security detail. In fact, drivers were creating some of the problems. So it's working out the versions of event that took over that 2 hour period that when they eventually arrived at their friend's house. That is causing the problem. And that has actually backfired a little bit on the Meghan and Harry PR machine because they went dramatic. The other side of it is less so. Where is the middle ground?
I mean, it's baffling, I have to say, because, okay, if you're going for a walk with your children on the beach and there are a great deal of paparazzi that show interest in you and maybe there's a bit of hustle and tussle and whatever else, I would have great sympathy. But if you are someone, or if you are a pair, who don't wish to be photographed and don't wish the paparazzi to try and bend over backwards to try and get pictures of you, I would suggest, and I don't think this is an unreasonable suggestion, perhaps an award ceremony in one of the biggest cities in the world and accepting said award would not be the right place to go if you don't wish to be photographed.
Well, and New York is perfectly used to photographing celebrities of all types. And so, therefore, it's nothing unusual for there to be a big occasion in New York and the paparazzi to follow celebrities, of which in America, that is very much the raison d'etre for Harry and Meghan. And, of course, at the moment, it's a reboot time for the Duchess of Sussex because she's been very quiet over the recent months as Harry, all the focus was on him post the documentary and then the focus on his book, Spare. So she's now been rebooting her sort of role in everything, and hence the reason why she accepted this award for her work on behalf of women. And she basically, at the end of it, was a big occasion for her. So she wants that. On the other hand, Harry's got this difficulty. He doesn't want it. He's got an absolute loathing of the press, and we know that from the various court cases that are going on at present. So therefore, Harry at the moment doesn't know what to do because he's caught. He knows his wife needs to promote what she's about. She's quite happy with it, given her sort of Hollywood background. She understands the celebrity side of it. But clearly, when you get into cars and then there is paparazzi following, for all, that is the symbolism that obviously weighs heavy on Harry's mind.
Yes,
and clearly it did.
There are some. If I was a cynical person, and if Renee was cynical, Rupert, and neither of us are, but if we were, some might say that if I wanted to pitch to Netflix more interesting aspects of a documentary, that aligning myself as being put in the position that my mother was in that led to her death would be an amazing narrative for an aspect of a documentary. Now, I am not so cynical as to say something like that. Heaven forfend either of us in this studio. But
and when you have a court case ongoing.
And when you have a court case ongoing against the press too, as Renee has just pointed out, yes. Do you see what I mean? Like, it does seem like an awfully, some might say, convenient narrative that would make a brilliant part of a documentary that, oh my God, history's repeating itself. Look, I was being chased just like my mother.
And don't forget the security issues as well that he's discussing as well where in this country. So clearly there's a lot playing out there on behalf of the Sussexes. But I think that the problem is the lack of trust now in what we see coming out of the Sussex has built over time. So we're struggling to always accept everything on face value and say, right, because we know over the time some of what they've said has been exposed as not being quite the truth. So this is the problem for the Sussexes. How, to go near catastrophic, when I first heard about it on 3 o'clock on whichever afternoon it was, Wednesday, you suddenly thought, whoa, that doesn't sound great. And the immediate reaction is, immediately you think of events in Paris. There's no two ways about it. That was my initial thought. But very quickly, we then got the NYPD, the New York Police Department, saying different versions of events. We've heard now that Harry and Meghan, by all accounts, have asked to get the photographs from the paparazzi, which has been flatly refused by Backgrid, the agency, saying, we don't do that in this country. You may do, because when the King asks for something in Britain, that may happen, but certainly not in New York. So this is the problem.
Should we hear as well from the taxi driver? Because we've actually got what the taxi driver had to say. This was the car that they transferred into after this near-catastrophic, and I use that term quite loosely, car chase. And, well, this is what the taxi driver had to say regarding how dangerous that chase was.
Paparazzis, they just came out of nowhere and just started taking pictures and flashing. It was like a light show all of a sudden. And they were just about to give me the location. They never gave me the location where they were going. And then the security guard told me, circle back. As we are circling back, you see the paparazzi's car following my car. My feelings were normal, but I'm sure their feelings were more intense because his mom, Princess Diana, died in a crash running away from the paparazzis. So I think their emotions must have been higher.
I mean, do you think that that's part of the problem here is that, and I'm not denying the paparazzi can be absolutely awful and they can bend over and backwards to get photos, they can cause scuffles. Again, it is an award ceremony, so you would expect some of that, I would say, but, it still doesn't mean that it can't have been, there can't have been something happening. But do you think that this is reflective of maybe Spare and of maybe what we saw in the Netflix documentary as well, that maybe events that to other royals or to other people in the public eye might seem less significant, Harry seems to, he used the word, catastrophic. He tends to catastrophize and create a dramatic narrative, whether that be because he doesn't have a great perspective, whether that be because, he's been on the mushrooms again, or whether it actually will be because it makes a good story for his books and documentaries.
I think there is a degree of his insecurities manifest themselves very quickly. And what we're seeing here is that, he feels there is a sense of injustice at times in his life, and I think it manifests itself. But you can't get away from the fact that they put themselves in the front line to be photographed. And the whole point of last Tuesday night was for her to be photographed, her to give this award. Now, people may disagree or agree with her getting the award, but she got that award. It was a high-profile occasion. I think the people, anything yellow certainly came out well. New York cabs and Hertz rent-a-car seem to be the two things that have benefited most from the photographing and the events of that night. So free publicity for taxis and car hire firms by the looks of things. But
it was a bizarre location for an award ceremony. She had to sort of walk through a Hertz rent-a-car office to get to it.
Yeah, well, she had to walk through I'm told that was the back entrance to the hotel. Clearly, but and then she's wearing a golden dress. So, I mean, yellow was the colour of the night. I'm being a little flippant, but the point is, for Harry, these insecurities manifest themselves. Now, when you're hearing from the taxi driver, who there sounds very reasoned, very calm, he wasn't panicking about anything that was going on. There was clearly, and this is where you may have to look at the Harry team itself around him. Did they overreact? Did they panic? Why weren't they controlling the situation to make it easy for the Sussexes so that they didn't feel uncomfortable. Yeah. What was going on? Why didn't they talk to the paparazzi? But there seems to be, you know, that's why, and even their spokesman has had to backtrack and say it wasn't 80-mile-an-hour car chases, because presumably if they were on some freeway trying to get out of New York. And late at night, I don't even think that's very easy, if my memory serves me correctly.
Oh, yeah, I've not spoken to anyone in New York about this, and I've spoken to a couple of media places there that thinks that what they were describing was remotely possible. And that's a real... Rupert, thank you so much, TalkTV Royal Correspondent, but just to say that's a real indictment of where their PR is now, because who knows, maybe it was a genuinely horrifically frightening situation, but they've cried wolf so many times now in people's minds that people just roll their eyes and say, oh yeah, right, okay, probably was a load of rubbish. And I'd be really worried if I was their PR. I'd be really worried that no one, or not very many people, seem to believe a word they say.
Do you know, when I watched the documentary, I actually was almost won over. I did actually feel that the press intrusion on those children and then later was actually so much for anyone to bear.
They've got a grain of a point in what they say. They do.
But this is silly. I mean, anyone who's been to New York knows that this didn't
As I said,
like
we've got to go to a break, but I'll just quickly say, as I said, I was on Vine this week and got absolutely berated by Yasmin Alabai-Brown when I said, look, if you're triggered by flashbulbs, don't go to an awards ceremony. Really don't. It's a really simple solution.
And, you know, they're the best people at invading their own privacy, aren't they?
And this is all part of a commercial circus that they have been the ringmasters of. So it's difficult.